Hi, Martin Roberts here. Welcome to another property masterclass, and it's my special all about buying property at auction. This is number 5 in a series of, can't quite decide, depends on what I've come to by the time I finish this one. Maybe 5 or maybe 6 segments on buying property at auction. There was so much to tell you. I've broken it down into little chunks of 10 minutes or so each time. If you haven't watched the previous 4, I suggest you do that before you start watching this one, because we're sort of leaping in after the auction or towards the end of the auction on this particular module. Make sure you like this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends if you've enjoyed it. And so what we're trying to do here in the masterclass is just try and give you an overview of some property investment principles. Hopefully inspire you into the world of property. But obviously there is so much more to learn, which is why I do my property trading courses. So I advise that you take a look at those. You know, they do cost money, other than as opposed to this, which is obviously free with my compliments. But you will always get back more than it costs if you train yourself effectively and with professionals, and they can teach you the tricks of the trade, how to raise finance, how to find deals. It's important that you invest in your own future, and I don't think you'd expect to learn any other trade. And investing in property and renovating property and doing up property is a trade. I don't think you'd expect to do any other trade without learning the ropes, and that's what we try to do on the various training things that I do. But let's look now at either the final or the next to final segment in my masterclass on buying property at auction. And we've covered off in the first module all about why auctions and sourcing properties, what kind of things you could be looking for. We've looked at finances, we've looked at what kind of property comes at auction, and we've looked at why people actually take their properties to auction. And we've actually in the last module looked at the actual auction process itself, and then we're now at the process where we've actually had the auction and we've either been successful or not. And so let's look at what happens now. Now, if properties aren't sold, and depending on the auction and the time of year, and in fact, you've actually had to, I will do an extra session 6, which is all about other things and some other hints and tips I haven't talked about in the previous 5. But some auctions and times of year are less popular than others, and that can be a good time to get headlong to a property auction, because less people in the room, the better. But there may be properties that are unsold, and often, if a property isn't sold, you'll be in the bidding process. Perhaps it could be you that's bidding on the property that doesn't sell, or not necessarily. But the auctioneer will going once at £85,000, going twice, £83,000, going a third time at £83,000. I'm sorry we can't quite sell it to that. We didn't quite get there. But if you are interested, come and see me. And that's the auctioneer telling you that the reserve price wasn't met. And we've talked about in a previous little segment about reserve prices. The reserve price is the price at which the property will not be sold. And that's decided by the seller beforehand. And they will say, I'll tell you what, well, not going to sell it unless we reach £85,000. In that case, it got to 83, and therefore it didn't sell. And just to say, there are auctions and properties that are sold without any reserve. So in other words, somebody in the room, they're the only person in the room, the only person that bid, and they bid £1, they get it. I mean, that is the way it would actually work. I think there's probably enough people in the room who wouldn't let it sell for £1, because somebody would say, well, I'll give you 10 quid, and somebody else will give you 50 quid, and then somebody else said, well, I'll give you 100 quid, and before you know it, it's up and being sold for a reasonable amount of money. But it could theoretically happen. But in the case I just gave you there, the property had a reserve price of 85, it reached 83, it didn't sell. It's tantalisingly close though, but the auctioneer can't sell it for 83. What he can do in the auction sometimes is let you know that the reserve price has been passed. That is, he can often say something like, it's in the room to sell, this one's selling tonight, this one will be selling to somebody today. There's lots of little sort of hints he can give that the reserve price has been met. The auctioneers can also do something called taking a bid off the wall. And this is slightly contentious, but they can take imaginary bids. And people say that's not illegal. The reality is the property will not sell below the reserve price. So up to the reserve price, to try to get the property to the reserve price, the auctioneer can, and often does, take an imaginary bid, and he'll look to the room at an imaginary person and say £8,000, thank you, £80,000, thank you, £80,000, £81,000, 81, 82. There's nobody bidding. But because the reserve is 85, he can take those bids off the wall, and the argument is that it tries to get the price up to a point where the property will actually be sold. A lot of people find it a bit of a strange thing to get their head around, but it can actually happen. But in this instance, it's £83,000. It hasn't sold. The auctioneer say, come and see me afterwards, we're very close. Now, you don't even have to have been bidding on that property, but if it's something that you're interested in and you've done your research and you've checked out the legal pack. Now, the legal pack is available prior to the auction, normally 2 or 3 weeks at least before the auction, and then you can get that to your solicitor or whoever else is going to look at it, somebody who knows what they're talking about. In certain circumstances, well, in all circumstances, the auction pack is always at the auction as well. And in certain circumstances, a property might be of interest to you that has sort of almost come out of nowhere. Now, you are entering the realms of this is dangerous territory, because you need to have done your due diligence, you need to have gone to see the property, and you need to have read the legal pack. Now, obviously, if it's somewhere you haven't been thinking about buying, my overriding suggestion is to walk away. However, if it does seem like it's something which is a really interesting opportunity, and you know the area, even know the house, and you can look on Google, Street Maps, all that kind of thing, do a bit of very quick research, it can be that you can make an offer. Now, it doesn't have to be in the room, so you can actually get hold of the auctioneer the following day. So that does give you a chance to do a bit more research and read the legal pack, which is in the room, but you can get a copy of it and send it to your solicitor. But it may well be that on the day, if you can get your ducks in a row and do your due diligence, that there is an opportunity to do a deal. Because obviously the seller is going to be fairly disappointed that they didn't sell their property on the day. And they may well be open to an offer. They may well have set their reserve price at 85. But it stopped at 83. If you offer them 84, are they really going to walk away for £1,000? Or if I don't think so. And the numbers might be different to that, but you get the kind of idea. So as long as you're happy with the property and you've done your due diligence on it, and that you're not concerned that nobody else was willing to pay more, and that there's no issues with the property that you're not aware of, then it can be something that you can talk about with the auctioneer. As I said, you don't need to have been the person who was bidding on the day or in the room. You can go along to the auction afterwards or talk to their staff and say, I am interested in such and such and such a property. And then you can strike a deal, or maybe not. So there are people who look around all the auctions and look for the properties that didn't sell, and then make deals with the sellers of those properties. And that is certainly a strategy you might want to consider. But if you haven't been successful, don't worry. There will always be another auction. There are hundreds, thousands of auctions going on around the country throughout the year, and unless it's a completely unique property, there will be something very similar which you can buy. If you have been successful, just to round up, it's really important though that from the moment you exchange contracts, you insure that property, because you are responsible for it from that point on. And there are circumstances that I've come across where in between exchange and completion, as in the house you went to visit perhaps, and the house you end up going into once you bought it, things have happened to that property. It could have got fire damaged, it could have been vandalised. I mean, we've had instances where boilers and pipes and electric cables have been ripped out of a house, and at least if you've got insurance on that property, then at least you're covered. So that is one major tip. And if you haven't been successful and you put a lot of time and effort into researching properties, that's just the way it goes, okay? You don't get too disheartened. You have to kiss a lot of frogs to find that prince or princess, and it's part of the process. Don't get too disheartened, and any money and effort you've spent getting to this point, just put it down to experience, and when you go to the next auction, you will have more of that. So that's it for this little segment. I think I'll just do a synopsis and a few other hints and tips for our final session of 6 in this little sort of special property masterclass on auctions. But for now, please do like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Remember all the training opportunities that I've got for you through martinrobertspropertyeducation.com and Asset Academy with the Martin Roberts and Making Money from Property brand, and also my online property auction masterclass, which is an online 12-part series that you could do, which just expands on everything I've been talking about here, including going along to an actual auction and taking you through the whole process. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this, and the final one of this series will be on my channel very soon.